Welcome to UO Today. I'm Paul Pepis, Director of the Oregon Humanities Center. My guests today are Scott Coltrane and Frances Bronet. Coltrane was named Interim President of the University of Oregon after Michael Gottfredson resigned on August 6, 2014. He previously served as the university's Senior Vice President and Provost. Coltrane was Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences from 2008 to 2013. A sociologist, his research focuses on families with special attention given to the ways mothers and fathers divide parenting and housework. Bronet was named Acting Senior Vice President and Provost on August 8, 2014. A professor of architecture, she has served as the Dean of the School of Architecture and Allied Arts since 2005. Bronet's interests lie in developing and publishing work on multidisciplinary design curricula that connects architecture, engineering, science, technology, and society, dance, and electronic arts. Thank you both so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
So I think the question that everybody is wondering at this moment is, how is the university positioned for this new academic year after the significant governance and leadership changes that have happened in the past 6 months, 12 months?
Well, I'd have to say we're in very good shape. We have a very strong leadership team. Frances has been here this is about her 10th year, I believe. It's my 7th year. We have a remarkable group of deans, vice presidents, vice provosts, most of whom have been here for a while. We're doing good work and we're moving forward.
Yeah, one of the things we do know we want to work on is how do we relate to the rest of the campus? And I think, as I've said to Scott, we may be the only campus in the country that has 2 people who were deans such a short period ago. And so that's, I think, a remarkable opportunity. And we've also worked together for years now as deans, as provost and dean, and now in this position. So we have a kind of rhythm that's already established, so we can move forward in establishing that rhythm with the campus.
And some of the teams that we put together, we both served on the executive leadership team, which is mostly vice presidents and other directors, and the academic leadership team, or the Dean's Council, that also has vice provosts. And those groups are so collaborative. Most campuses, there's a lot of turf wars. People here get along really well, so that's going to make our lives easier.
Well, I can attest to that. I'm also personally, as a faculty member, I'm extremely pleased that you are both recently deans.
And we taught, too.
Yeah, and good teachers, you know. So are there any particular initiatives that are on the front burner for you guys this year?
Sure. Well, I just unveiled a competitive excellence plan with our Board of Trustees. So you asked about governance. They want to know, where are we, how are we doing, how are we going to get better? So we are now rewriting our mission statement, which is an interactive process. Please check out the new one on the web. And we are also embarking on a strategic planning effort that Frances can talk a little bit more about. So I'm setting out some goals, just overarching high-level goals that will figure out where can we invest to really get better. So things like attracting the best and brightest students, particularly Oregonians, but from across the nation. So high quality and diverse student body, high quality, diverse faculty. We have a goal of hiring another 150 net new tenure track faculty. So we have to raise some money for that. Those are key. Other things, build our graduate programs, build our research base, develop a financially stable model. We need to have that. We've been a little bit underfunded. So part of that will be raising private money, but also getting the state legislature to reinvest in higher education, which we're doing jointly with the community colleges and the other public universities. Actually, we're more presenting a united front to the legislature than we ever had when we had a state system. Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to play well, and we'll hopefully get some more money in our coffers.
And I'd be remiss, as both an architect and now as provost, to not mention the fact that we're thinking about how the academic plan and ultimately the strategies to implement the academic plan will manifest in a physical infrastructure, and that's also a significant element. And really, as we're speaking, we have a team of landscape architects, planners, and architects looking at the campus and coming up with a comprehensive vision framework for how we actually manifest our dreams, our ambitions into a physical infrastructure on the campus. The campus has grown substantially over the last, 20 years, and we actually have not looked at what it is to do what used to be called a master plan, now we call a kind of comprehensive visioning framework for where should we put the next set of projects? How do we imagine open space? How do we think about the campus as a framework for learning, not just the inside of a classroom or a dorm, but actually the entire journey a student, faculty member, staff would take to actually experience what it is to have a robust education. So that's very exciting.
And that's a little overdue. We have some immediate sighting of some big projects that we need to figure out, and then we'll take over a year probably to really look at a framework that's going to work going forward. The other things that are happening very soon, we're rolling out a public phase of a campaign before too long. We're also doing a branding effort, similarly to what most other universities have done, really talk about the academic excellence of the place. Buy airtime, do public service announcements, really sing our own praises. We're a little too humble about who we are and what we're doing, so we'll be embarking on that. We've got a couple other things, cluster hires. We're raising money for those. Maybe we can talk about those a little bit more. And that's it.
So what's a cluster hire?
What is a cluster hire? So last year, actually about a year ago, in conversations with then President Mike Gottfredson, we began thinking of an idea to grow our faculty, because we grew by about 4,000 students in a very short time period. Mostly we hired lecturers, instructors to fill the gap. So we knew we need to had to reload on our faculty, hire more research active faculty, which is predominantly tenure-related faculty. Most of our peer institutions have a ratio, a lower number of students to tenure-related faculty. So we know we have to invest in that area. So we do normal hiring, and probably 2/3 of our hiring will continue to be through departments, through colleges, through normal processes. But for some of our hires, we're thinking, as many as 20 a year. We wanted to have another mechanism for hiring in areas that we know we're good at already, but we can be great at. And so sometimes just the addition of 2, 3, 4, 5 faculty could really put us on the map, be competitors with the best universities in the country. So we asked, we had a series of meetings campus-wide. We asked people what they thought would be the best way to organize this and how we should evaluate how to select where we're going to invest, because this is fairly new for the university. We had those discussions, revised those plans a few times, and then did a request for proposals. Faculty got together, submitted proposals, and then we had a review process of how we selected those. And we elected to go with standing committees. So the Faculty Advisory Council, which is an elected body, been around since 1916, we learned just the other day. I didn't really know the history of that. But that advises the president and the provost. We had them review the proposals. Our Research Advisory Board, also newly reconstituted by the provost. That's a large group, faculty represented, both those groups. More representation of the professional schools, because there's usually slots that are filled, so there's a range of faculty members, and then the academic leadership team. So that's the deans and vice provosts with academic titles. They all rated these proposals. We picked the 10 winners, went with what they said, and we feel like this is something we can do every probably 3 years. Right now, though, we don't have funding for all of them. We have $1.5 million that is set aside. So that's enough to do 1, maybe 2 cluster hires. That's recurring money. So that would be to hire the faculty, mostly paying for
So when
salaries.
you say 1 or 2, you mean 3 faculty?
3 plus 3.
So 6 additional faculty.
Exactly.
So how many of the in the first round, how many were selected? How many of
So 34 proposals were submitted. We had more in discussion. There were probably 50 or 60 in discussion. Some didn't kind of come to fruition. People are busy, and so they didn't submit. And they wanted to probably see what the first round looked like. 10 were selected, and we have them in our campaign goals. So we're now talking to donors about which ones of those they'd be willing to fund. So it will take, on average, $20 million to fund 1 chunk of 3 to 5 faculty, as well as some startup money if there's labs associated with it. So we're figuring we could do 3 of those this year. We're not sure. It depends on how much money we raise. So we have some money to do a couple. What we'll do also is see whether we want to do this again in the same fashion, whether we want to change the process. There was some discussion that they weren't totally representative of everything across campus. I think that's okay in the first blush, but we need to get that right, make sure that everybody is applying, or actually putting in applications. What was different about this too is we really wanted to emphasize some subfields that are very narrow. So within a couple of departments, we have proposals, for instance, in a genome function center or volcanology. So those are subfields of biology and earth sciences that are very narrow. But many of the others were cross-disciplinary. So different faculty from different departments putting proposals together. There had to be a sponsoring dean, because that's how we do things. And I think it worked pretty well.
I think one of the goals for the next time is to imagine, if we are thinking about 3 years from now, what structures do we put in place in the next 3 years to ensure the success of groups that might not have felt that they had enough of the support or even knowledge of how you put these materials together in such a way to have a successful response. So we'll be working on that as well.
And you implied that one of the goals of the new campaign will be to help finance these cluster hires.
Absolutely.
So are there other priorities for the campaign that you want to tell us about?
Absolutely. So we have large buckets into which we'll pour hopefully lots of private philanthropy, and what we're looking for is scholarships. Access and excellence is kind of the hallmark of the campaign. So access, we want certainly all qualified Oregonians who are able to get into the university. We should fund their education for 4 years if we can, if they have the financial need. So several $100 million we're asking to try to bolster the endowment so that these will be sustainable over a long time. So that's undergraduate scholarships. Graduate fellowships, same thing on the graduate level. We have enormously successful and high-ranked graduate programs. We have many more qualified students applying than we can fund. And frankly, the reason that we don't have a higher take rate is because we don't give 3, 4, 5-year packages and we don't pay enough. So we want to bolster that. So that, again, would be endowment. That's new for donors to want to give to graduate education, but it's really important. That's something that states have traditionally done at public universities. Our state has withdrawn funding, and so we need to find private ways to fund that. Faculty money. We needed faculty endowments for faculty chairs, faculty professorships. You know, we really need to have money at our disposal for faculty who are being courted by others. So we need a fighting fund. Many of our donors are kind of sympathetic to that. They know that we have great faculty, but when some of the top research universities come to raid them, we need to be able to be nimble and quickly put money on the table. Spousal hires, things like that. Buildings, we always need buildings. Our IT infrastructure needs repair. Program support, you know, things like the Humanities Center. We want to be able to stabilize those kind of funding. So we're going to put more emphasis on endowment funding because we feel that we're looking to a future where we want to have the ongoing funding and not just invest, you know, current use funds. So it'll be a mix between current use and endowments.
Good luck with that.
Thanks. We have a lot of generous donors. I've never been at a place where alumni are so loyal. People love the school, they love their time here, they know we're good, and they want to help us get better.
Well, that's encouraging. So you're the university's in the midst of revising its mission statement. So why is that an important thing to do? Why is it important to revise our mission statement?
Well, the near-term issue was with a new board, the legislation called for the Higher Education Coordinating Commission to approve mission statements of the universities. So now there are
that's a state,
four. So it's a state requirement. Previously, the mission statements were approved by the State Board of Higher Education, which will be going away at the end of this year. And so with individual boards for each of the campuses, we all will be reviewing our mission statements. Ours looked the most different than the other public universities. And so we began a process in spring, involved some open forums, fora, and we had people come and we talked about it. We've had several drafts now, a web portal, questionnaires. We posted all the other AAU institutions' mission statements. We're not going to please everybody, but I think we're getting closer. There's a value statement, a vision statement, a purpose statement. So it may not be a lot shorter than the current one. And some of the things in the older statement are things that people loved and didn't want to get rid of. So we're trying to do as much as possible, differentiate ourselves a bit from the other universities, particularly the large universities. Portland State is an urban campus primarily. Oregon State is a land grant and technical school. So we are liberal arts at our core, but we're also very strong at core disciplines in the sciences, and professional schools are very strong. So we want that to come through in our mission statement. Then the state will use it to allocate funds to us, so we want to be careful to get the right stuff in there.
Is there any other kind of values that you want to tell us you're hoping to get into there?
Just a commitment to undergraduate education is huge. A commitment to graduate mentoring is huge. The phraseology that Frances and I like a lot is that we teach students to question critically, think logically, act creatively, live ethically. I forget one.
And that's it.
Communicate clearly.
Oh.
You sound like English professor.
Yeah.
Well, some of us would say it sounds like architecture professors.
So there's been this change in the governance because we have a new board, and there's also now a faculty union and a collective bargaining agreement. So those are major changes. How has that affected the job of administration at the University of Oregon?
Well, particularly for the provost and the president, more work, more attention to some of the details of the distributed models that we have. So we're a decentralized decision-making structure, and we empower faculty at the department level to make lots of decisions. So coordinating what happens with departments to schools to the larger structure, standardizing some of the things, the collective bargaining agreement calls for some of that. A lot more attention to who's at the table for what kinds of decisions under what circumstances. So we're doing a lot of policy formulation and kind of codifying how it is that we actually make decisions about things. I think in the end that will help. And also it's raising questions of equity across different kinds of units. So where there were big disparities, those are slowly starting to be leveled a bit. So there's some more uniformity. We still want to hold on to the kind of uniqueness about individual capacity to make decisions about governance and policy, but we're looking more alike, and I think that's a good thing. We were a little unregulated, I think.
Well, CAS, for example, is doing a really...
College of Arts and Sciences.
College of Arts and Sciences, a comprehensive and very deep look into professional responsibilities, for example. All of us will look at that. They're sort of setting the model and really just asking questions. What's common practice in various disciplines? And we not only have to compare discipline to discipline under the rubric of the University of Oregon, but also to our peer institutions, because what might be happening in psychology may be very, very different than what you deliver in biology. So those are, we've done some of that, but I think we're starting to actually look at it in a much more coordinated way. So in terms of the work, there is a lot of work coordinating. We have a lot of people who know how to do this really well. They're incredible implementers and have very big ideas, but the bandwidth is only so wide. So how much can we do? And actually determining, okay, we have so much time. What's our goal for this year? What's our goal for 5 years? What's our goal for 20 years? So those are also being put in place. And I think we spend a lot of time thinking about when we're in the weeds and how do we pull out so that we can always remember that we're also guiding higher education. It's really critical.
It's a tough juggling act, I would say. I mean, from the perspective of a faculty member, and an administrator, bandwidth is a problem. We don't have enough bandwidth. So,
on the other hand, I will say this. I think the reason why we are an extraordinary school around ethical behavior, manifesting itself in a kind of environmental stewardship, we can come up, community ethos, is because we don't have a surplus of resources. So that it means that we have to be very careful and thoughtful. Would I like more resources? Absolutely. I think we've talked about it before, is that we're probably maybe too lean. But I think that there has been an incredible advantage, and it builds the community. I'll give you an example. We just got all the deans together, all the directors of programs, to present how they're going to move into the campaign and what are their priorities. And everybody stayed. In another institution, people would have walked out and said, I did my thing, I'm done. But in fact, people listen to each other, and what happens is when we get together as a group, as a collective, we actually understand where we're standing together. So I think that it's a value that doesn't exist in other places. And I'm guessing some of it is resource-based.
That's interesting. So obviously one way that resources are going to come is through donors, and we've talked a little bit about that. But you alluded just briefly to the relationship with the state. So in this new kind of environment, how do we make that case to the state for
Well,
continuing support? I mean, so you're on board now.
Great question.
Good riddance.
So
Why
I
more?
think the economy of the state of Oregon is greatly enhanced by what the University of Oregon does for it. We are not only an intellectual magnet, we bring talent into the state, but also we have an obligation to serve students to help them contribute and give back. And I think that's the argument we make to the state. I think that they realize that. Not only that, but our retention rates, our graduation rates, and the quality of our students exceed any other institution in the state. So we have to be making that case. And then in partnership with those institutions, try to fulfill the state's goals, which are 40, 40, 20. That is 20% of students graduating from high school, 40% graduating with a 2-year degree, a community college or vocational degree, and 40% with a BA or beyond. And so our share of that, the 40%, we have to do in concert with the other public universities. So together, we will be going to state legislature. In fact, I was up in Salem and we were going around with the community college representatives too. There are 17 different community college districts, and they have been unified for quite some time, and they make asks together. Well, this is the first time that the other institutions, the 4-year institutions and the 2-year institutions together were approaching different legislators. So we're going to have a gigantic ask. Right now the figure is probably $755 million recurringly. And what we want is the state to go back.
That's for all of
All
us.
of
That's
them.
for all of those
Yeah.
together. So our share would be substantial, something on the order of 20 or more million dollars a year, which we could do a lot with. And we feel that that would only bring us back to the pre-recession levels, about 2007, 2008. The state legislature has already done that kind of reinvestment in K-12 education. There's continuing needs there as well, so we don't know if we'll get the whole thing, but we're certainly going to be bold in what we ask for, and we're expecting the state to reinvest. I think the sentiment is there. Part of it is just a limited amount of funds, and then it depends on whether the kicker kicks or not and how much the legislature has to give, but we're really hoping that there'll be reinvestment on the public side as well as on the private side, because we are fundamentally a public institution and we really take that serious.
So will you tell us a little bit about the work of the panel charged with reviewing the UO's prevention of and response to sexual misconduct? Say a little bit about that.
Sure. So we have the equivalent of a blue ribbon panel, experts, judges, legal experts, student services experts, and they've been meeting. They've been on campus. They're scheduled, I think, with 5 different meetings. They've been here 3 times already. There are public portions of that. They're interviewing people, what we do in terms of reporting and prevention programs, what our policies look like. So that group will continue to meet, and by the end of the year give us a recommendation. That's in concert with the Senate has a task force. They're meeting actually today, right now, and they're also making recommendations which they'll feed into this review panel. They're working together. They're talking to each other. Other committees are working on pieces. We should have some best practices to consider during this academic year. In anticipation, though, of getting through this year and knowing there's a lot of attention, I did do a few changes that were delegated to me by the board, such as extending the student code of conduct off campus, so that now all University of Oregon students are, whether they live off campus or not, are subject to the code. And those are simple things that I knew would come out of the more permanent recommendations, but wanted to do it now for this year to keep our students safe. So, but there'll be a whole host of, I would imagine, dozens of recommendations. The whole country is going through this. I mean, the incidence rates are just incredibly high, and we really need to get a handle on how we can stop bad behavior.
So tell us about the timeline for the search for the university's next president.
So we have now appointed a search firm and an it's not a search firm, they're working on that part, a search committee as well as an advisory group, both of whom will be involved in the interviewing of the finalists once they get to that point. And this is run by the trustees, the board of trustees, so I'm not serving on that group, and neither am I a candidate. So we're hoping we'll get somebody very good. I think the turnover, there's some sense that maybe that'll scare people away. This group is committed to going out and really beating the bushes, finding qualified people. They will be writing, a challenges and opportunities docket. They'll be working with a search firm. I think we're poised to be able to hire somebody maybe by the end of the year, but they committed to the fact that we want somebody who's very good, and they'll take as long as it takes to get somebody very good, and I told them I'd stick around until that happened.
So it could be a year from now, it could be...
Yeah, likely to a year from now, maybe a little longer.
So does that mean you're imagining you'll be the provost again someday?
I didn't have to give up that job. I love that job. Sorry.
Okay. So you're both active researchers. Do you still do any of that while you're administrators? I mean, do you find
So
any
the first
time?
response is, haha. But in fact, I actually, because I didn't anticipate this job, and the summer was, for me, relatively quiet, but we all have different sort of scales of engagement. And so I actually was working on a project with dance company, Danceability, local dance company, and we're working on taking the project to 4 universities which have are taking our project, as well as the National Building Museum. So that's over the course of the next year and a half, as well as working on a set of papers talking about what I call Feel the Force, the relationship between structure and body, and how structures can actually be enabled by bodies, and bodies can hold structures together.
Structures,
so,
buildings?
building structures, yeah. That there's actually a relationship between how we occupy space and movement itself. It's a larger theoretical sort of
So tell me
proposal.
what Danceability is.
Danceability is a local mixed abilities dance company, so people with disabilities, as well as people who are like me, who have some, I can't really move that quickly. And so people ask me how I got involved with them. It really was that they were the best company locally. And it had really, and by some great fortune, they have incredible energy, and we were able to build a company around this project that we just put together called Don't Leave Me. And we showed it, we had our premiere in Eugene, but now it's moving across the country. So my goal is not just to install the project and design it, but actually write about it and get people to understand what it means to work in space.
So Scott, we have 1 minute left. So is there
I am
any
lucky
research
enough
you're
to
doing?
have worked with some graduate students here in sociology. We published a paper last year. Don't have any current projects now, but we're of course recycling that work and talking about policies. And that was about family leave, among other things.
Look, say a little bit more. You've got a little more time.
So what we did is we looked at longitudinal data sets of young adults and then followed them through childbearing years. I was looking particularly at men and whether or not they took time off of work to take care of family members. So we didn't ask men back in the 70s whether they had kids or took care of them. Well, we did ask whether they had kids, but we asked them about their job behaviors. And so there was a couple of questions that said, I took time off work. So it could be paternity leave, but other just time off or cut back in hours. And so those men who did that, lo and behold, 30 years, 35 years later, had depressed wages. So we've known this about mothers for a long time, but there was a question, would the same thing happen to men? In fact, yes. So it may not be gender discrimination per se, but it is parental discrimination on some level. And as a society, we should worry about that because I think we have to take care of our kids and keep them safe.
Take care of our kids, take care of our parents, take care of our university. Thank you both so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Scott Coltrane, Interim President of the University of Oregon, and Frances Bronet, Acting Senior Vice President and Provost. Join me next time as I speak with the novelist Amanda Copland, author of The Orchardist. See you next time. Thanks very much for watching.